Hi Flosstube, how are you? My name's Jennifer and this is my channel Stitching with the Waves. Welcome, I'm glad you found me. If you're returning, it's great to have you back and see what I've been working on. I've got a Jolly July update for you today and a little bit of other stitching. I've gotten quite a bit of stitching done in the past couple of weeks since my last video because we've just been at home. We haven't had any travel or anything like that, so that's been great. Last week I did have my older daughter had a friend with us during the week while her parents were at work, so she ended up coming to Hobby Lobby with us one day. And if you've ever been to like Disney World or Disneyland on like you're the adult and you're taking a child there for the first time, it's just like a different level of magic watching them experiencing it and seeing it through a child's eyes. And I was feeling that way at Hobby Lobby with my daughter's friend who had never been to Hobby Lobby before. It was just so much fun. She was so excited about every little thing. We spent about 2 hours at the store, and normally 2 hours in the store with 3 children would be like my nightmare because they just at some point would lose it and be wanting to leave, but they were totally into it. We walked every aisle. They could have spent more time in the clearance aisles looking at every little thing than even I can. So it was just really fun. All the kids ended up finding a few things to get. My daughter and her friend are both working on redecorating their bedrooms a little bit. So they were, comparing things and talking about what they wanted to do. And they had a great time, and it was so much fun to be there with them. And I found a few like finishing things and things like that I was looking for. So that was good. And then I just, spent a lot of time working on cross stitch. I did not FFO anything. I spent all my time actually stitching and not FFOing. So hopefully that'll change this week coming up, but we'll see because I kind of say that every week. And then I also, at the beginning of the summer, I had made a to-do list of all the projects I wanted to get done around the house, not stitching things, just like other house projects and things I needed to get done around the house. And I looked at that last week. I'm doing okay, but I definitely have not done half the things. So I need to spend this second half of the summer break really trying to knock out some of those projects, because I know once school starts again, there's just going to be very little time to actually take care of that stuff. So let's move on. I'm filming today because my kids are at lacrosse camp, so I've got a brief window of quiet time with no kids in the background making crazy noises. So I'm just gonna get this video done while they're not here. So I have 2 new starts for Jolly July since my last video. So these are the designs that are gonna get wrapped around the wooden spools and then used as ornaments. So these are all patterns that I picked out from Antique Patterns. So I've got this 40 count natural linen up here, and then a 40 count ivory linen down here. So I've got 10 spools, and I've got 6 of these ornaments started. So these 2 here are finished. Let me see how close I can get with it not getting too blurry for you. So I finished these 2, and I started this one up here. And then on the ivory, I started these 3. So when I did the starts, I just sat down, I put in 1 length of thread on that ornament. And when that length of thread was out, I moved on to the next one, just so I could get them all started and laid out on here. So on both pieces of fabric, I have room for 2 more ornaments to go down at the bottom. So I've got 4 more that I still need to start. And next time I pick this up, that will be what I start with, is getting those 4 started, so that after that, every time I pick it up, I can just start getting it done. So these 2 got done. I worked on them at a meetup that I went to, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. Actually, let me put this stuff over here on the chair. Okay, so then the second new start I had for Jolly July is I was making some pieces to wrap around a pillar candle, so I don't have like a cross stitch piece. So I was using this 27 count linen banding, and you can see at the top there, the edges are finished. Sorry, it's this one edge. I've got it folded in half. So the edges are finished with this pyramid shape, so I don't have to do any finishing along the top edge. So I picked out another antique pattern that I'm doing in a Christmas red and green with DMC. So this is gonna wrap it around here. It's gonna get wrapped around a candle, around a pillar candle. So this is as far as I got. I usually do a 3-day rotation and work on one project for 3 days. This guy, I worked on it for 1 day. I ended up frogging this red motif here, and I had to frog out this green leaf here. It was just a rough stitching day, you guys. The night before, both of my daughters had a friend sleep over. And the older two were great. That friend had slept over a lot of times before. There was no issues with them. But my younger daughter and her friend, you know, they haven't had as many sleepovers, and so they both woke up several times in the middle of the night, you know, a little scared, lonely, whatever. So I ended up like laying in my daughter's room with them, and I was tired. So I probably should not have picked that day to do a new start, but you know, I did, and ended up having the frog visit quite a bit. So it is what it is, it's fine. So I decided the second day, I was like, I just can't work on that again. I need to just set that aside, put it in timeout for a little bit. I do an ivory band that I want to make as well. So I think next time I pick that project up, I'll work on the ivory band and get it started. And then hopefully I can get back to this natural colored one and not have so many counting mistakes going on. But for now, I'm just gonna set that aside and just keep going with the rotation. So the next third project is some patterns out of this book, The Magic of Christmas to Cross Stitch by Veronique Enginger. And I'm working on, I think it's 14 different patterns out of there. So last time I showed you this little ornament that I had finished. This time I finished this little toy soldier in a stocking. I can't get him any closer without it getting all blurry. I'm sorry, you guys. I gotta figure out how to do closer up images without them getting blurry. I finished that guy. So after I had these two done, I really liked how this was coming out. So I've been stitching this on 32 count Lugana and antique white, 1/1 with DMC. And I had started it originally on 36, and the ones that were, you know, more dense full coverage stitching, because there's so many color changes, it was bulky. This turned out great. I loved how it stitched up. I did the back stitching, and even that turned out well. So I decided, great, now I'm just gonna do starts since I've got 14 of these. So I ended up setting a timer and just working for 30 minutes on one of the motifs. And then after 30 minutes, I move on to another. So I managed to get 6 of them started, I think. So here's 2. This is a little reindeer. This one, you can't tell what it is at all, but I believe it's gonna be a Christmas ornament, like a ball-shaped ornament. And then on this side, this is gonna be a little like red work Christmas tree. This one I think is a sleigh. Those are like the bows on the packages in the sleigh, I think. This one's a rocking horse. It's kind of his back, the blanket on his back and his red mane up there. And then the last one is this one, and that's gonna be a little birdhouse. This is like the red roof and the little green wreath around the hole where the bird would go into the house. So I've got 6 starts there. So I'm gonna, next time I pick this up, keep going on starts so that I can get all of them started. And then once I have all of them started, I'll be able to just start finishing them off and getting them done. So that's gonna go in the little house-shaped shadow box that I found at the thrift store. So that's my Christmas house project. Then I have the 12 Days of Christmas. This pattern was a freebie on Paulette Stewart of Plum Street Sampler's website. So I'm doing it in this layout. It can be stitched either as individual ornaments or as one piece all together like this. So I'm doing it like this all together. And this much done. I've got 4 days complete now and 1 day started. So I just finished the 6th day on this rotation, and I love how that goose turned out. He's so super cute, all his little eggs. It's coming out great, so love that. Then I worked on, for the past 3 days, my Fleur de Lin Quaker Ball de Noël. So it's just a Christmas Quaker ball. So it's got 12 squares, and then the rest are hexagons and octagons that you stitch all individually, cut them apart, and stitch them together, so into the ball shape. So I've been working on the squares from that. So I have these done. Show it to you all together. For some reason, oh, this is showing a little more green in this lighting than it really is. Okay, so I've finished 9 of them, I believe. And I'm working on the 10th. So there's 12 squares. So I'm really close to being done with those squares. I'm hoping I can finish up the squares today even, get them done, and then I'll be moving on to just the octagons and hexagons. So we'll see how much more stitching time I get today. But that's my Jolly July update. That's all the Christmas stitching I've been doing. I have one more whip that I worked on. It's my travel piece. So you guys, I went to my first stitching meetup. I went to the DC Metro Stitchers meetup. They met at a library here in the Northern Virginia area. And I hadn't been able to go. I found out about the group in the spring and the dates just hadn't worked out. They usually meet once a month. So this month I was free. I was like, okay, I have a lot of social anxiety. I don't like to walk into rooms of strangers. I don't like to talk to people I don't know. But that morning, gathered up my stitching, got in my car, drove down there, gathered up my courage, got out of the car and walked into a room full of people where I knew no one, absolutely no one. And I was welcomed with open arms. Everybody was so friendly. It was so easy and stress-free to sit there just stitching and chatting with people. Like, you can always chat about stitching, even if you can't think of anything else to say to someone that you don't know, you can still say to them, hey, what are you working on? What are you stitching? What kinds of things do you like to stitch? So that was a lot of fun to go and meet some local stitchers. I hope I can make it to the monthly meetings going forward. I'm a little bit less nervous for some of the other meetups and retreats and stuff that I have scheduled coming up, because I feel a little more comfortable. Like, it was easy to walk into a room of 15 people rather than a room of like 50, that just seems a little less intimidating. So I just wanted to let any of you who are watching, I know some of you I'm sure have no issues with this, but if anybody does feel stressed about going and walking into the room full of strangers, or trying to go to some random meetup of stitchers that you don't know anybody, just go, just do it, because everybody in this community is so friendly. And it was just so nice to sit and stitch with people in person. It was like live Flosstube, but you actually got to have the conversation, It wasn't so solitary. I think, stitching in a group is a different experience, and it's one that if you want to, you should look for a group and try to find one and go and meet some local stitchers to you. Just have some people local to you that you can talk to and sit and stitch with. It's great. So I worked on the spools, the wooden spool ornaments. They were on 40 count, but that magnifier and light that I showed you in my last video were fantastic. I was able to work on those for about an hour and a half before my eyes got too tired. The lighting in the room is pretty good, and I used that portable light that I showed in my last video, and it was great. I was able to work over 2 on 40 count. Fantastic. So I did that until my eyes got tired, and then I switched and worked on my travel piece, which is the Quakers in France Mystery Stitch Along from Tempting Tangles. So here is my current status on that one. This is on 32 count lamb's wool linen. I'm doing a color conversion to all shades of blue. Back here, and I'll show you. So I worked on up close this hilly area here that I'm just doing in half crosses to kind of give it a different texture to it than the full crosses. And I think I worked a little bit on these houses down here as well. So I've got some more like monuments to put in up here next and start working down the side. So I will be taking this with me on my next trip and hopefully have some more progress to show on that. All right, so I think that was all of my whips and everything. So I wanted to talk about my Flosstuber now because that kind of ties into a little bit of the haul that I have. So the Flosstuber I wanted to shout out today, most of you probably already know. It's Arlene Cohen, and her design company is Works by ABC. Or that's her initials, Arlene B. Cohen, so Works by ABC. And you can find her on Flosstube at Works by ABC, on Instagram. I believe her Etsy shop is also called Works by ABC. And she's a woman of many talents. And she not only designs her own cross stitch and counted canvas work, but she's also one of the chatting partners for Gary Parr of Fiber Talk. So she's on there. I think it's every other Wednesday or something like that, every third Wednesday, something like that. But she and Gary talk about some really fascinating stuff. Arlene's just really a very cool woman who does a lot of different stuff with textiles, and she does a lot of just different unique things, I think. So one of her most recent pieces was featured on the cover of the most recent Just Cross Stitch magazine. It's that lacy white work piece on the navy blue fabric. If you've seen it, it's like a circular design and it's really cool. I don't want to stitch that piece as it is, but I have some ideas about how I want to stitch it and how I want to adapt it. So that is kind of percolating. It's not something I'm going to start right now because it needs some time in my mind to kind of form into what I want it to be, but I kind of have the idea there. So I'm working on that. It's a really cool piece, and she also has an ornament in that issue. And then she does bobbin lace as well, which I had never seen done before until I was watching some of her floss tubes. Sometimes at the end of one of her floss tubes for maybe 10 minutes or so, she'll actually do some like a stitch along with me portion, but she's doing bobbin lace, not stitching. So it's worked on these huge round pillows, and then the pattern is all pinned down. Then you like use the pins to hold the threads, and then the ends of the threads are wrapped around these wooden bobbin spool things, and then she's so fast at like flipping these spools around and weaving them with each other. It's fascinating. And if you haven't seen bobbin lace worked before, her pieces are beautiful, and you should go search for one of her floss tubes. Usually she puts bobbin lace in the title, I think, if she does some of the bobbin lace at the end. They're just really cool, and watching her do it is fascinating to me. So if you haven't seen it done before, go check out one of her videos and see that. One of the other things that she does is she volunteers at her local used book sale. She has this massive used book sale, and she volunteers by organizing the hobbies and crafts section of the used books. She gets all the books in and then sorts them and organizes them and puts them all out on the tables for people to come in and purchase. And then she has a huge book collection, and she will frequently mention a book or do a walkthrough of a book, show books that she found at thrift stores or used book sales or whatever. And she finds treasures, you guys. They're amazing. They're not always a cross-stitch book. A lot of the times it's just a book that she has seen and looked through, and she finds the pictures in there very inspiring, and she'll take those pictures and translate them into cross-stitch or other designs, which is really cool. I would absolutely love to spend a day like just sitting amongst Arlene's books, flipping through all of them. Just every time she mentions one, I'm so fascinated by it, and I'm like, I want that book, but they're pretty much all out of print. So you have to look at, used books, used book sales, thrift shops, maybe eBay, something like that, to try and find these sorts of books and these types of books. So I forgot to tell you, in June when I went to my used book sale, just somehow it completely slipped my mind. I did not find any treasures. I was there Saturday morning. It's a Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday. It was a Friday, sorry. Scratch all that. I went to my used book sale on Friday morning. It runs Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that you can pay the night before on Thursday to get in as an early bird thing. I think you can pay a small fee and go in and see everything early and purchase things. it's run by our public library. So there were, like I said, over 90,000 items in the sale between like books, DVDs, games, puzzles, specialty items, things like that. So 90,000 things, that's a lot. It was a huge sale. It's a local middle school, so the cafeteria is just all the children's books. All of the cafeteria tables are set up with just massive quantities of books on them. So my kids spent like an hour and a half looking through all those books and getting a bunch. And I did get about 15 minutes, not as long as I wanted, but about 15 minutes to go all of the two gyms, the two gymnasiums. One of them has adult fiction and the other one has all the, like it's adult nonfiction. So there's a whole hobbies and crafts section, a big long aisle across the whole gym. And it's got like 3 rows of books on the top of the table all the way down. And I did not have enough time to like really pick through. But I think that, like I said, it's not, there's an early bird sale you can go to. So like any big treasure that you were gonna find in there, any old book or something really cool, that would have already been gone by the time I got there. But I did find 4 books, and for $2 each, even the things that only have like one pattern or one thing in them that I'm interested in, it's worth it. Like, where do you get a $2 pattern? You know, like that's totally worth it. So the first one I found was Treasury of Cross Stitch Samplers by Sharon Perna, and it's from, I believe, 1987. So I didn't find any samplers in here that I want to stitch, but I did find in the back, they have 2 appendices, one for alphabets and one for numerals. And I love alphabets. When I'm designing something, I frequently want an alphabet. I have a big collection of alphabet patterns, but it's kind of difficult to look through them all sometimes. So there's 34 in here, and I'm going to show you quickly because it's the actual chart, so they don't have pictures of the alphabets, but the way they have it laid out, as you can see up here, it's like 5 squares high, and over here 4 squares high, 5 squares high, 5 squares high. So each alphabet it lists, it tells you how high it is, and it goes, I think the tallest one is like 21 squares high. So if I'm making something and I know I need something that's like 7 or 8 squares high, I can go look in the appendix and page through to where they have 8 square high alphabets and see if any of them work for me, rather than going through my pile of patterns that have alphabets and counting, you know, how high is that alphabet, how high is that one. So I just thought that would be useful to have. And the next one is Sweeter Than the Rose, and it is from the Christmas Remembered series from Leisure Arts. This is book 7. And again, there were not many patterns in here that I was terribly interested in. Most of them are just not my style. But they did have these 4 samplers, and they've got some specialty stitches, some eyelets, some drawn thread, or not, maybe it's not drawn thread, some pulled thread, I think. Yeah, I think that's just pulled thread. There's 3 more here. So there's a set of 4. And they are too large for me to just stitch in petite point, especially with the pulled thread areas and things like that. But I thought that they would be adaptable for doing petite point for my miniature house. I just, something about them said, get that. I think there's something you can do with that. So one day I'll get to that. The next one is Gorgeous Cross Stitch by Chris Rankin. And if you can envision this whole scene here in blue rather than in red, that drew me to it. I was like, that would be very cool to have. So the things I found in here also, here we go. On this page, I found some few samplers there, and they're also too big for me to stitch for my miniature house just like that. But I could take, for example, the little windmill right there and stitch that with a border and a little alphabet around it. Or I could take the topiary here or the vase of flowers and stitch it on something, stitch it on a pillow cushion or as part of a sampler. Just kind of scale those down, and I think that they would be really, really pretty in there. And then I also, so I made the cat sampler for my daughter Caitlin. I'm working on designing something. My older daughter and I found a pattern. It's another Quaker one. So we're going to swap out a few of the motifs for things that she really loves right now and make it a little bit more personalized to her. So she loves pineapple. So when I was flipping through, there's this eyeglasses case, because that's what you did in the 90s. You stitched everything, you know, on something. It had to be an object, a thing, not just framed. So eyeglasses case, but those pineapples. I was like, oh, that's great. I can use that pineapple. So I've scaled it down a little bit from there, and I'm putting that in her sampler. And then the last one is 501 Cross Stitch Designs by Sam Hawkins for the American School of Needlework. And this one is just full of tiny little motifs of all different topics, and they're kind of divided into sections. The first one is this floral. Okay, so I thought things like this heart could be used for petite point for my dollhouse. This Bless Our Home. Victorians had a lot of mottos that they would stitch up, particularly on perforated paper. So I thought something like that. I could, if it's small enough, I can stitch it just like that. And if it's not, I can adapt it. So there's a bunch of just little floral motifs on this page that I thought could work for that. And then my daughter also loves lacrosse. So I was paging through, and this happened to catch my eye. This little, can you see this? Sorry, it's so tiny. This little lacrosse stick. She wanted a lacrosse stick in there. And I had started trying to chart it, and it just looked funny. I had the shape of the head of the stick correct, but the lacing on it just looked too bulky and funny, and I couldn't figure it out. So there you go. Got cross stick, stuck that right in. And then again, more motifs that I could use for samplers to stitch up for my miniature house. These down here look like a row of painted ladies almost. You can see here's a little sampler they made and put it in a small little frame, a little gold frame. There's another one over here on this page. So there's a bunch of little houses in there that I thought I could pull out and use. These two here are some Japanese inspired buildings, and the Victorians really, they liked exotic things. They liked traveling and then having like treasures from their travels. So I kind of thought those Japanese ones were interesting and might make it cool looking cross stitch to hang on the wall in that house. So I've got quite a few things out of those books. I felt like it was well worth it. So if you have a used book sale in your area, I would highly recommend checking it out. You might not find any antique books or other things, but there are a lot of treasures to be found there and things that you never know what you're gonna find, basically. So if you have one, go check it out, see what it's like. My last piece of haul is another pattern from the Fleur de Lys, which is the same company that designed that Quaker ball Noel that I'm stitching for Christmas. So this is, I am not even gonna attempt to pronounce the name of this. Something autumn and October, I don't know. I got nothing. That's the name of it right there. But it's on the Fleur de Lys website, and this is October. So I did buy all of the months. She has all 12 months, and I purchased all of them. This is the only, I just printed out the one to show you. I think October is the one I'm gonna start with. So I just printed that one for now, and I'll show you the others as I get to them. My plan is to stitch October, and when I'm done that one, I'll start on November, and I'll just keep working through. So October is the only pattern that has any variegated thread in it. It calls for a variegated DMC for the green, for the grass down here and the words. But all of the patterns have a house in them. They all have the grass, you know, the roof of the house. So I'd like to switch out some of the colors rather than doing it in all DMC. I'd like to switch out some of the colors for variegated. But in order to do that, I need to go to an actual stitching shop where I can see. I can't pick the colors out from pictures online. I've got to go to a shop in person and see it. So one of these days here, I will throw my kids in the car and we will go on a little road trip. My LNS is about 45 minutes away. So we'll just have to do that one day, but I'm not sure when that'll happen. So the other issue with this is there's no blue, and most of the months there is no blue. So I also need to do a little bit of color changing to get some blues in all of them, because I do want to have some blue in each one. The July pattern, I think it is, she sent, there's two, she like charted it in 2 different colorways. So that one had a blue palette that came with it. So we'll see if I end up using that one or changing it up a little bit more, but that's gonna be one of my next starts that I do. So plans, I'm gonna finish off Jolly July. We just have a few more days left in July, so I'm gonna keep working on those Christmas projects and get as much done on each of them as I can, get as many of the little individual motifs started as I can, so that the rest of the year I can just pick it up and keep working on it, because it does take a little more time to actually, you know, get something started. And then I also, so on August 1st, I'll put my other whips back into rotation. So I sat down and made a list of all these Christmas pieces, all of my current whips, and then the things I want to start and get done in the remaining part of 2019. And I've got about like 20 things. So I can't just start and have a rotation of 20 whips, or I'm never gonna finish anything. So I'm gonna keep doing my 3-day rotation. I'm gonna have a focus piece. So I think my first focus piece will be Autumn from Little House Needleworks. So I can get that done. It's already started. I think I can finish that up pretty quickly, and then I can get it FFO'd and ready to put up for the fall. Probably I'll put it up like early September. So I wanna get that done. And then after that, I'll just pick my next focus piece. And I'm kind of thinking I'll alternate a Christmas piece and then something that's not Christmas and as my focus piece. And then I want to have about 5 whips, so that each month I end up working on my current rotation at least once that month. As I finish my focus piece, I'll pick something else to be the focus, and hopefully that will help me just continue to get finishes and get things done, so that then once I've finished something, I can, you know, add in either another whip that I already currently have started, or I can do a new start. So we'll see how that works. I really want to try and keep it to just my focus piece and 5 whips, so 6 total projects that I'm working on at one time. We'll see how that plan works out. We've got another kind of quiet couple of weeks coming up here, so I'm hopeful I can get a lot of stitching done. Tomorrow, I think we're gonna go to our local county fair and check that out. And then it's finally cooled off here. I know most of the country has been under that horrific heat wave, and we've had a couple of like just crazy thunderstorms come through that took down lots of trees and knocked out power and stuff. And I know that's happening around the country, so I hope everybody out there is doing okay and surviving this crazy weather. I think the heat wave is, you know, breaking. It's been beautiful here yesterday and today, so that's good. Hopefully we can keep up the nice weather and get outside a lot, get a lot of projects done around the house, and get a lot of stitching done. And I hope you can do the same. So happy stitching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.